Here we are.
I have a topic for the filter, and that maybe you or one of our viewers or listeners can help me with. I have had this thing in my neck, a neck pain that is on the verge of, if I turn the wrong way, I'm not going to be able to turn my neck anymore, sort of thing. And I can't get rid of it. Like, you know how you wake up and you've slept wrong and you're like, shit, I can't turn left today. And it takes like 3 days. I'm in the pain area right before that happens, like every day. I can sort of feel it, and it hasn't gone completely bad, but it's always there.
Massage?
I'm scared. Okay, so it's a good idea. I'm scared that they will trigger the thing that will make it worse by pressing on it the wrong way.
Sure.
No?
Physical therapist? Is that like the more proper?
I think so, probably.
Right.
Yeah. But then I got to get a prescription for a physical therapist, and I don't feel like going to it. If you've tried to get a appointment for a doctor over the last 2 years, I'll call them and go, yeah, my neck hurts, and they'll be like, all right, we'll see you in October. So maybe I'll just go to PT on my own dime.
Sure.
Not worry about insurance.
Good luck with that. Better have a lot of time ready for that.
I feel like I need 3 appointments.
Did CJ get a new camera? Why is he so crisp right now?
I don't know.
Why does CJ look like he's fucking...
He did move. But it's the same camera, right?
It is the same camera. I have a window behind me, but it looks like sharper. I don't know if it's like a camera setting that I need to adjust.
This is piercing. Your eyes are boring into my soul right now.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't want to be a distraction here.
CJ has his own filter. Like, got friggin' hot guy filter over here.
It's AI CJ.
Yeah, this isn't real.
Hot guy filter. All right, let's do it. Let's get the hot guy out of the way so we can look better. Jesus. The Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast is presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Sign up for DraftKings Sportsbook by using promo code RTRS. Brought to you by Adam Ksebe, Ksebe, the official realtor of the process. His cell, 302-864-8643. Big Barker Therapeutic Dog Beds. Get yours at bigbarker.com/Ricky. Maybe that'll help my neck. You should sleep on Rebels Big Barker. Kornblau Kornblau, the official law firm of the Ricky. And Stateside Urban Craft Vodka, the official sponsor of the Corner 3 newsletter with Zoe, statesidevodka.com. On the show today, looks like James Harden's coming back. We'll talk about that. Finally, perhaps get to the new 2 assistant coaches. Voicemail line backing up with a lot of good takes. And we welcome back an enemy. Maybe one of the first people ever banned from the Ricky. Still banned, actually. Andrew Sharp, Wizards fan of Greatest of All Talk, Sharp Tech, Sharp China, and Stratechery, joins us to tell us if Bradley Beal is still good or not. I did mention Stateside Urban Craft Vodka. I did talk to Clement from Stateside yesterday, was discussing, I said this, as we were talking about the Sixers, and Surfside came up. I said, Surfside iced tea and vodka is good. I didn't say it this way. I'm saying it to you who's listening. Is good all year round, of course. But the summertime is truly... Summertime, I even say, during the day is great. A warm summertime evening might be the perfect alcoholic drink ever created. Surfside iced tea and vodka is different than other iced tea and vodka beverages because it is better, simply better. It is the right amount of sweetness, not too sweet. I'm not into too sweet. The right amount of sweetness, only 100 calories, and no bubbles because there should not be carbonation in iced tea. You can try the regular iced tea vodka, peach tea and vodka, lemonade iced tea and vodka, and then the lemonade and vodka. Go to statesidevodka.com, but you have to be 21 to drink it. Without any further ado, Amos and the chef.
We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We was right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We were right, y'all. We say the name. Say the name. Say the name.
Say the name. Say the name. I say the name. I say the name. Say the name.
Life's tricky Sanchez forever.
Welcome to the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. I'm Spike Eskin, along with a guy that many are calling the perfect drink of summer. That is Mike Levin.
Hello. Here we
Hi.
are.
How you doing?
I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm still upset about the Bill Simmons, Doc Rivers interview that I was forced to
Days
endure.
ago?
Yeah. I was seriously, and over the past few days, I thought of other stuff to be upset about. Just worked up about it.
Luckily, there will be so many different things to be upset about that we don't need to dwell on one. It'll just keep coming.
That's right.
So Andrew Sharp joins us in a little while, which will, I'm sure, find one way or another to make us upset. Sharp is a longtime Wizards fan and has been dying for a rebuild. So the idea of them trading Bradley Beal is very exciting to him. But somebody who has watched Bradley Beal a lot more than we have over the last few years, I think would be good. So we'll talk to Sharp in a little bit. So I texted you a couple days ago. I don't remember when. And I was like, hey, really think Harden is coming back. Really think Harden. And I've said on the pod a bunch of times, it was in my gut. But then I started to like hear things and I felt like Harden was coming back. Then Bill Simmons said, and I am not the little birdie. Heard from a little birdie last night, Harden going back to Philly is way more realistic and probable than everyone is giving him credit for. There's been some Philly buzz, and that's one of the reasons they're not in the Beal sweepstakes. Then John Clark.
Who is not giving that idea any credit?
Yes. Well, I wonder from a national perspective if people really think he's going to Houston and leaving here. In Philly, it feels like it's real. It's more likely that he comes back than not. I wonder if outside of Philly, it's not that way. You know? Because I think the options outside of Philadelphia have been presented as equal. And then there's Phoenix. Do you know what I'm saying? If you're just a casual observer, it seems like Bill Simmons. And then John Clark says, an NBA source tells me the desired outcome for the Sixers is still to do a deal with James Harden that makes sense in the short and long term for both sides. I think all I would like to just reinforce is that he is definitely coming back. He is definitely coming back. Unless some team out of nowhere becomes incredibly desperate and offers him some giant contract, he is definitely coming back. So
yeah, I've always thought it was a very strong possibility. I never thought that they were going to give him all the money and years in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I've been saying that since the season ended. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion in any sense. I think that he just still has to just decide what he wants. And
he just wants
regardless of like what the market is like or whatever, he might just not want to be here anymore.
Sure.
And so who knows what the reporting is, who knows what the who's leaking whatever, but it seems like the what's what the state of the situation is there's not as much of a market for him as he thought or hoped. There's some smoke about like, well, maybe he could get a bunch of money going to Phoenix or a bunch of money going to the Lakers or whatever. And it just hasn't materialized. Houston would maybe want him if he decides to come back, but is not going to back up the Brinks truck for him. And so the safest assumption is there will be some compromise to bring him back to Philadelphia with Daryl.
We got two, I think, good Harden voicemails. We got a bunch of them, but I would say two that I would like to get to. Here is the first one. 833 Lickface is the voicemail number.
What up, Spike, Mike, and CJ? Nick from Atlanta here. So I'm currently listening to the latest pod. Y'all just got done wrapping up the Bradley Beal stuff. Spike has just said for the second time, under no circumstance do you bring back James Harden. And I get that. I do. But if you can get Beal, and this is a huge if, but if you can get Beal for basically Tobias Harris and some draft capital finagling, and you can bring back Harden under the guise that he does want to go to Houston, like that's where he wants to be, but you're like, hey man, bring it back for one more year and then we'll trade you to Houston for basically nothing for cap space, whatever. I think you probably do that, and I'll go a step further, and it pains me to say this, but I think I would trade Maxey for ideally Mikal Bridges, but I don't think you can get Mikal Bridges for Maxey. So OG Anunoby. And you roll with Harden, Beal, Anunoby, Tucker, Embiid. You have to throw in like Furk and House and Trez and like a few contracts to make that work, but it's doable. You run it for one more year and then trade Harden for basically cap space in the offseason, re-sign Melton, re-sign Anunoby, Melton, Beal, Anunoby, Tucker, Embiid. Still pretty good. I don't know. I think I would probably do that. I'm just curious on what you guys think.
What do you think of his plan?
I really don't love the idea of Harden and Beal.
Yeah.
At the same time.
I think it's unlikely, but possible. But I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like something that some person who is like star obsessed, with, obviously the upside and the possibilities of like assembling a team with Harden, Beal, and Embiid, like you're running a NBA 2K17 franchise. Sounds good.
Yeah.
You hear that and you're like, okay, but man, that is a lot of, hey, we got rid of Doc. We replaced him with another guy that hasn't won anything. I guess Beal hasn't had pressure on himself to win.
Not for a while.
Really any sense. He's just sort of been around. Just Harden and Beal don't defend. I just really don't love the idea. I've always loved Anunoby, obviously. And so I see the validity of if you're going to go get those guys, then you get another guy like Anunoby. But Anunoby's not been seemingly happy in Toronto with less of a role.
Right.
So bring him here to also have less of an offensive role doesn't seem like something that he would love in the way that like Jeremy Grant didn't love staying in Denver for being just like 3-and-D type. I just don't want to trade Maxey in under really any circumstances.
You did before include him in a Toronto conversation that included Anunoby when I presented it to you. I'm not trying to obviously you can change your mind, but
when was that?
A few weeks ago when we were talking about we were talking about Van Vliet, and I was like, well, what if there was a sign and trade and yada yada yada, and Harden and Maxey went out and Van Vliet and Anunoby came in. It was something to that extent, and I think you were leaning toward yes.
Yeah.
So, but
I don't know. Yeah. I can't remember anything that I have ever thought.
I
just think like could I see a world? Could I get myself to see a world where Harden, Beal, and Embiid make sense? Sure, that's a huge contract. That's again like old guys. Beal's 30, going to be 30. Like he's still got some pop, but like him and Harden, that slows down. That defensively, you're like nobody's getting anything. You're having to just that's a lot of, depending on like Melton and PJ Tucker for a lot of stuff there. I just feel like if you get Beal and you make him play with Harden, then like there's not much of a difference between like Beal and JJ Redick at that point, Like you're gonna make him, if Embiid has the ball, Harden has the ball, Beal's flying off screens. Yeah, he can hit tougher shots. Yeah, he can do stuff, but you're really there's not that much responsibility you're giving him. Maybe for if Maxey's gone, he runs the offense when he's not there.
Except that in a playoff game, you would have somebody else who could create a meaningful shot.
Of course, but that's so much. That's just so much money, and so I don't know. Maybe that's the problem with the like 3 stars at the same time is that like one of them has to be a guy that stands in the corner a little bit. And I love the idea of someone who can hit movement shots. The Sixers haven't had that person since JJ, and they haven't had that person as not a role player in forever. But I don't know. I just don't want James Harden back.
Wow.
I can get myself to get excited about Beal with Maxey on an undervalued, like okay, he's getting paid a ton of money, so we only had to trade, to buy us a first and a swap for him. But man, I just don't want Harden back.
Speaking of which,
what's going to happen to me if I have to watch James Harden one more time with the Sixers uniform on, take the maximum amount of time to get the ball across the half court line, and then stand with his heels on the half court line for most of the rest of the clock, and then throw the ball to someone with 2 seconds left. I can't do it anymore. Last thing, non-basketball related, is I wonder every time I hear the opening song if that's young CJ at the end saying "Right to Ricky Sanchez forever." Jeff from South Philly.
so
It
looks
is,
like that guy
obviously.
shares your feeling. That is CJ, actually.
Yeah, of
from
course
when
it's
he was a
CJ.
baby. Yeah.
Mhm.
Recorded about 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. As painful as that doc interview was, like, he's right, and everybody knows he's right, that Harden doesn't want to move without the ball.
Yeah.
It's incredibly clear. I don't think that there's any magic sort of like country wizardry Nick Nurse and his guitar can do to get James Harden to move off ball. I think that's just not how he plays anymore. Or if ever. He barely played like that at any point. He was weaponized as one of the best offensive players of all time in Houston. And then he's like, cool, this is what it's going to be forever. And he's slower and he has less touch. And there's just not much that you can do to creative around the fact that the guy doesn't want to move unless he has the ball in his hands. And so it is really that plus how slow it is, plus how slow the offense is, it's just really unpleasant. And I know it was effective, efficient wise during the regular season and a bunch of playoff games. But I think especially, I think if Harden was 28, if Harden was 31, you could go like, I would and have seen myself go like, it's just, yes, the playoff failures are real, but like, I'm not going to write him off because of that, because he's so good in the regular season. But he's just not, he's not going to he recaptured some of that youth in this playoffs, and it was like everyone still has a bad taste in their mouth.
Yeah.
Because of how bad the bad is. The bad is so bad. And I just can't get excited about bringing him back even on if it's a 1 year, if it's a 1 year deal, then like, why didn't he pick up his player option? So it's got to be higher than that. So it'll probably be a 2 year deal or 1+1 or whatever. It's not a thrilling proposition.
Adam Ksebe is the official realtor of the process. You may ask me, Spike, how do I spell Ksebe? I Googled it. I couldn't find it. Ksebe. Ksebe. Here we are in the summer, and you're probably, if you go down the shore, whether it is Delaware or Jersey, now Adam Ksebe, king of the Delaware beaches, you're spending a lot of money to rent a house for a week. A few grand, $5,000, something like that to rent a house for a week. It is fucking crazy. If you have the means to invest in your own shore home in Delaware, Adam Ksebe is the person that can help you do it. Not only will you have a place to go to that you won't have to spend several $1,000s for the week, but you can rent it out the rest of the time that you're not there, pays for the mortgage, ends up being an investment for you. And Delaware beaches, way better than Jersey. Think of Jersey without the property taxes, much lower property taxes in Delaware than in Jersey, and you've got a person who can help you. Ksebe, Adam Ksebe. He and his team at Long and Foster and Bethany Beach can get you anywhere in the Delaware beaches, whether it's Bethany or Rehoboth or Lewis or Dewey, wherever you want to go. He is the person that you want. They've got all of Delaware covered, all of Maryland. By the way, if you're looking to buy or sell a home in PA, New Jersey, New York, yada, 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 Ksebe can't do it himself, but he is still your resource as he has connections everywhere. We'll find out what you need, interview the realtors for you, and find you the best person. 302-864-8643. 302-864-8643. That is his direct cell. If you're listening or watching right now, you should text him, see what he's doing, 302-864-8643 or Adam at processrealtor.com. Speaking of people we don't like, one Andrew Sharp. Sharp Tech.
How are we doing?
Sharp Tech, Sharp China, every podcast named after him. The greatest of all talk.
Named a friggin'
available.
kid after himself.
Yeah.
That's right. Here we go. New dad. How you guys doing?
Good. Wait,
Hey,
let me
buddy.
finish your plug so people can find out where they can get your products at Stratechery Plus. Includes all those things, right?
Yes, sir. You can go to stratechery.com or my Twitter to subscribe, and you'll get access to all three of my podcasts, Greatest of All Talk, Sharp Tech, and Sharp China. Big weekend for Sharp China. Blinken is over in Beijing as we speak. And you also get daily writing from Ben Thompson, who is awesome, probably the best tech analyst anywhere. So it's a very good deal.
Honestly, Ben is, I've met a lot of people in my life. He's definitely the smartest person I've ever known. And the fact that you do a podcast with him is fucking mind blowing about his area of expertise. You're on it. It's wild. What is he
It's
doing?
great. It's
Yeah.
great. You know, we've had fun the last 9 months or so. So we're going to keep it rolling here. But I basically podcast every day of the week now. And here I am on Saturday with a little bonus podcast here. So
Well, this isn't work for you. You've been doing this for a long time.
Absolutely. I mean, why do you think I was interjecting and interrupting Spike? It's just so good to see you guys. You know, it feels like it's been too long. I have no idea. My question for both of you.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
start us off with the question.
Yeah. Before we get to Beal, you do the interview.
I'm a professional podcast host,
Yeah.
Spike, so I got this. How the fuck are you still podcasting about the Sixers after everything that has happened over the last couple of years?
Me
I don't
is the only thing I'm good at.
Well, you don't have to stop podcasting, but stop podcasting about this particular team, which does nothing but like stomp on your heart year after year after year.
No, I don't know. I mean, I think it's probably like how, I don't know, some animal like keeps showing up to like a pond even after it's been like destroyed
It's
by
muscle
climate
memory.
change. I'm just there.
Showing
like-
up to the parking lot, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Just expecting it to change.
It's the Who Moved My Cheese of basketball podcasts. And we keep going to the same spot the cheese was, and we are the rats that die hungry, having not looked in a different spot. I don't know if anyone has read that self-help book, but we are examples of it for sure.
Yeah,
I
well,
haven't.
I mean, the Harden extension here, I guess it's a new contract he'll sign. All the buzz that he's actually going back to Philadelphia, like that to me would be a bridge too far. Like the idea of cheering for James Harden for another 4 years. So I salute you guys and your courage and I guess consistency. I just don't know how you keep this going.
Well, I don't know how many bridges too far we've already gone on. And it's just so many bridges sort of connected by rope and string and
Yeah.
like stapled together. It's not going to be 4 years. If it's Harden, it would be max 3, and I think it would more likely be 2. But I don't like it for any. So
I don't think you're right about a lot of things, Sharp, but I think you're always right about Harden. And I know that, and there's so many players that have come to the Sixers that I thought one thing about, and then I watched them every game and I was like, oh, and you know, they start at Jonathan Simmons and then they go all the way up to James Harden. And it's amazing how you can acknowledge that he is a good, great basketball player and say to yourself, I simply cannot watch one more second of him playing basketball, or I am going to yank my own eyes out with my own fingers. And he somehow accomplishes both things. It's amazing.
Well, and the meltdown in the playoffs this year was just so on brand for him. It's literally like every year he just short circuits and shuts down entirely. I don't know how you can pay someone after they do that. Like in the Heat series and toward the end of the Celtics series, it's just that's the fatal flaw. Like if there's any debate about, oh, well, because he could still help, he moves the ball, he had a great regular season last year, but like he's gonna be that guy. We all know that, and it's where someone like Beal is not as talented, but I mean, I at least trust that he's going to show up and like be functional in a playoff series. And I just really can't imagine trusting Harden to do that across 7 games at this point.
Yeah, especially when you watch. This happens every playoffs where the Sixers get eliminated in the second round and leave early. That's very generous of them to do. And then
It's right when I start getting really tired. In fairness to them, so it's not all bad.
And then other teams series start and you're just like, wow, they're playing so much faster. This seems like they're really moving a lot. Look at how fast these guys run and make decisions and stuff. And then the Sixers, it's just like watching like archival footage of like the 60s. And it's just so slow and indecisive and just like we're going to wait it out as if the shot clock is like the enemy. Like if all we have to do is get to the end of the shot clock and then we win. And I just can't imagine, watching those Nuggets Heat finals and how quick everything was happening, even how quick like Kyle Lowry was getting the ball up as fast as he can before like, shuffling it to Max Strus just because the defense is on their heels. I just can't imagine Harden doing anything like that. Maybe ever, but certainly now. And certainly for the next few years. They're just too slow and deliberate to really get it done in any way. So I'm
well, and not only that, look, it's not just that Harden is slow. Like game 6 and game 7, he was not even looking at the basket in the second half. I mean, the second half of game 7, everybody was just dead. But like that game 6 where it was winnable, Harden would take 3 steps inside the 3-point line and then kick it to whoever was in the corner, regardless of whether that person should be shooting, and he just was not attacking. And that's the type of stuff that we've seen so many times. It's like, I don't know, man. Good luck with that. So as far as you guys, you're the insurgency with the Sixers. Why aren't you, I don't know, like buy a billboard or something? Try to stop this. You've got 10 days here.
Oh, Sean, we're old, man. We can't be fucking doing billboard shit anymore.
That's young man's game. Yeah.
Somebody else take care of that.
We're resigned to it. Like, you're young, you think you can change the world. You get to a certain point and you're like, what's the best way to deal with the world? And that's sort of where I am.
Harden. Yeah. I mean, that's certainly his approach.
Yeah. I unfortunately do podcasts like James Harden now, which is tough for me. I think I was an all-time great. And now I'm just, nobody wants me. Nobody should sign me. Pay me nothing. Let me just die.
Make it to the off season.
Now, you mentioned Beal, and before we get to it, the one thing that you mentioned about Harden, and I'm sure driving the people who want Harden back crazy here, is it will continue to be my position that people have brainwashed themselves into forgetting how bad Game 7 against the Celtics and Game 6 against the Heat were. I don't think it's way worse than you remember. And the people who say Embiid was similar in Game 7 against the Celtics are correct. That you are correct. Point being, one of them is here and is going to be here and still has a chance to turn it around. The other one does not. So, but the Game 6 against the Heat and Game 7 against the Celtics, if you want Harden back, it's fine. But all I would ask of you as a favor to me is that you go and rewatch that game and watch him and then see if you'll still say it. And if you do, fine, but I don't think you would. So you did say, now Beal wouldn't be like that. So my question to you is very simply, is Brad Beal even good anymore?
It's a fair question. It's a good question. I would say I'm in the difficult spot of having to be kind of a Beal advocate this week, as a bunch of like NBA takesmen come out and are like, actually, Bradley Beal sucks. And if you don't realize that, then you haven't been paying attention for the last 3 or 4 years. The last 3 or 4 years, Beal has not tried on defense. He's been a chucker on offense. He's been a mediocre leader, and the Wizards have sucked. So I understand why a number of people look at Beal and say, God, this guy is overrated. But I also just feel like he's been miscast as a number one guy. And among the number two guys out there that you can overpay, he's perfectly fine. And I think at this point in his career, there is room to bet on him being able to reclaim who he was like 3 or 4 seasons ago, and just assume that he was in like one of the most dysfunctional situations in the NBA where there was no hope whatsoever. I've stopped watching the Wizards. I think Beal stopped playing for the Wizards for long stretches of the last couple seasons. And I think that there's still an all-star / all-NBA caliber guy in there who could give you like two-way play, good shooting. What is that little smirk?
Well, you're pivoting into marketing, Brad Beal. And I asked you an honest question, and now you're like, I know that some front office people must listen to this, and yada yada yada.
No.
Okay,
Listen,
all right.
I'm
okay.
not. I swear to God, I'm not Brad Beal's agent.
Okay.
I've just been bristling at all the people who are talking shit about Bradley Beal over the last week or so because I feel like they're overdoing it. Like, I was listening to Bill Simmons talk about how upset he'd be if the Celtics traded Jaylen Brown for Bradley Beal. And I'm like, are we positive that's a step down? Like, it's definitely not cause for a meltdown. I mean, Beal, he can dribble. He's a better playmaker than Jaylen. And he's got a terrible contract, but like the Celtics are about to have to pay Jaylen Brown $300 million. So that's going to be an even worse contract. So that's the type of thing where I'm just like, all right, everybody settle down. We know he's overrated, but he can still help a good team, or at least he's worth the gamble, I'd say.
And I was smirking because I was wondering, I was like, I can't imagine Sharp watching the Wizards like towards the end of the season. And then I was like, I wonder if is he watching Jordan Goodwin and like having opinions about it? And then you're like, I just stopped watching. And I was like, that makes sense. That sounds right. So that was the cause for my smirk.
I made a healthy decision. This is what I'm trying to give you guys. There's a better way. You could just sort of detach from the team that's been breaking your heart forever.
Well, is Ben going to give me Sharp Poland and Sharp, fucking, I don't know, Sharp architecture, and I'll host it with an expert on both, and then I can detach from the Sixers, because unless that's happening, I don't really have a choice.
And by the way, I'm fully reattached to the Wizards now. I'm all in on Michael Winger, flying on the wings of Winger, and excited about the next couple of years here.
So, yeah, you're a huge Johnny Davis guy.
Yeah. The fucking draft guys. Nobody warned me that Johnny Davis was the least athletic lottery pick in like 15 years. There were a lot of people who were like, hey, he's ready to contribute right away. Man, oh man, it was depressing to watch him at Summer League, let alone during the regular season.
They made some bad picks. It seems like they haven't even really tried to get guys that could play both offense and defense at the same time. It seems there was not even an attempt to know that they would have to.
Right.
Like, are they drafting for a football team where they think that guys only play one way of the field?
It's a good question.
I do have another Wizards Beal question for you. After I talk about Big Barker dog beds. That's right. Big Barker dog beds. If you are a dog owner, dog parent, and you don't have a Big Barker for your dog, you simply do not care enough about your dog's health, or you're uninformed. I am informing you, so the only excuse you'll have after this is that you do not care enough. BigBarker.com/Ricky. BigBarker.com/Ricky. If you go there, see pictures of the Big Barker, learn about the Big Barker, but also if you go there, you'll get the free Process Pup patches, so your dog could actually be in the club. The difference between the Big Barker and other dog beds is quite simple. Big Barker, real bed, engineered to keep your dog healthier, keep your dog's joints supported. As your dog gets older, that becomes more and more and more important as dogs suffer from arthritis, just like us. This will keep your dog healthier, 100%. There's a difference. You can look at it. You can see the difference. The other thing is, I know I'm saying Big Barker, and you think, well, it's just for big dogs. It's not just for big dogs. They have tiny little Barkers too. There's the Barker Jr., and how about this? It looks good, comes in all different colors, comes in all different shapes and sizes. There is a Penn Vet study to show the difference that Big Barker makes compared to other dog beds that shows improvement in joint function, lessen in pain severity, all those sorts of things. I'm just telling you, it's important that your dog is healthy. You are responsible for it. Make the switch. 10-year warranty, the foam doesn't flatten or they replace it for free. 1 year at-home trial. If you don't like it, if your dog won't sleep on it or something, we had a trick Rebel into sleeping on it at first. He loves it now. They will give you a full refund, even pay for the shipping. Handmade in the USA. Big Barker dog beds.
Sharp, you want to bark?
No, it's all you, man. That's your
Okay.
trademark.
All right. So we know that Beal has this no trade clause. The most insane thing to ever put in a contract for any player, maybe in the history of contracts in the league.
Mm-hmm.
So he can basically decide where he wants to go. The other side of that is that the team could say, okay, well, we're not going to trade you there. Or we're not going to make that trade. So you're just going to have to stay here. I guess, who do you think blinks in that scenario? Are they more likely to keep him there because the return is not good enough, or the return isn't what they get? Or do you think it's more likely to just say, fuck it, we need to get him out of here, we need to tank, yada, yada, yada? Who blinks?
It's a good question. I mean, the no trade clause, truly catastrophic. Last year, I went to Vegas Summer League and reconnected with a bunch of people I hadn't seen in a couple years, like different NBA media people and people with NBA teams, and like they didn't, obviously we're not like that close, so all they know is like, oh, Sharp's a Wizards fan, let me bring up the no trade clause. That was like everybody's icebreaker. And so I literally had to spend like 96 hours talking about what a shit show that contract was. And I'm still, I still can't believe it exists. But in terms of like the Wizards management side of it, I don't have a good feel for how desperate they are to move him. But in theory, they shouldn't be that desperate because this isn't their fault. You know what I mean? Like, if the Wizards want to pull the plug and start a rebuild, it's not on Winger if it takes an extra 6 or 7 months to get it done. So I hope that they have a little backbone as they talk to Beal and his agents and are like, look, we want to work with you to find a new team. And I think it's going to be best for both sides to move on at this point. But if you start getting picky and vetoing all these different trades, or like, Woj and some of the other newsbreaker people have said, he's going to be going to a new team and he doesn't want the new team to give up too much. So he's going to have a lot of leverage. Like, I hope they don't allow that to happen, because they do have leverage to say, look, all right, cool, just show up in October and you're going to be on the Wizards again.
But isn't the truth that he doesn't care that much, or he would have done something about it over the last, his wife likes living there. He likes living there. Like, he's getting paid $50 million. If they're like, you got to come back, I'll be like, all right. Like, isn't that the worry?
So he has the leverage. The Wizards have the threat of keeping him on the Wizards, and Brad Beal has the threat of keeping his loser energy in the locker room and just showing up and hanging out with his wife. Yeah, that's a fair point. I hadn't considered that. I don't know. I mean, I think his plan all along was to stay in DC, get the $250 million, and then end up on a contender. And I think that's where he wants to be starting in October. But yeah, maybe he calls the Wizards bluff and is like, hey, I'm perfectly happy to play out the rest of my career and win 35 games a season.
Yeah, I think Dame and him constantly telling the press how much he was built for Portland and wants to win in Portland has sort of given like cover to Beal to be more embarrassing in how much he wants to stay in DC on a really bad franchise. The bet that the Sixers would make is that he hasn't been trying the last 2 years, and going into his age 30 season, he has enough juice to be like a really good number two, share the ball handling ability with, in the creation with Maxey, have a nice 2-man game. Embiid's had 2-man games with like JJ and like Seth Curry, and Beal is obviously such a more dynamic player than both of those guys. Mm-hmm. And it could look very good. And then trying on defense. Do you think that like is that a worthwhile bet for the Sixers, but any team to make that, like, he has not been trying and can fairly easily return to the guy he was when he 3 years ago or something.
Yeah, no, I think it goes back to Spike's question at the beginning. Like, is Bradley Beal good? It's an open question, but it's worth a gamble because you look at like some of the alternatives, like James Harden. He can't guard. Like that's without the drama on that front has been removed for years now. Bradley Beal, it's like when you're in a workplace and you're on like a sinking ship, are you going to be your best self on a daily basis? And granted, he's one of the reasons it's a sinking ship, was paid to be like the cornerstone who lifts everybody else. But he wasn't that guy. And so I think moving beyond, like, can he be a number one? As a number two, there's probably a lot of room for him to, improve in a situation that's not horribly depressing.
Yeah, his career is really, I talked about it last podcast, but his career is really bifurcated into two segments of like the with wall, I'm the number two, I'm efficient, I'm trying hard, I'm athletic, I have juice, and then the without wall, more creation, not as good at it, higher usage rate, 3-point percentage goes way down, taking tougher shots, but worse offense. And if we can just find the balance between those.
Wouldn't that suggest, though, that they should try to have both guys?
Both.
Try to have Harden and Beal?
No, because I think Embiid is one, and Beal can be two, and Maxey can be also, 2 or 2.5.
The difference, by the way, and I'm not saying that you didn't say this, between Beal and Lillard is I actually have respect for Lillard wanting to stay in Portland. Damian Lillard is a hero in Portland, has always tried. I do believe actually does want to win there.
Sure.
Bradley Beal is not the hero in DC, has looked like a total loser, has not tried for 2.5 years. So, so I do have a little bit of, or not, I have a lot of respect if the guy's like, look, I'd rather just try here, even if I never win a championship. I'd rather try here till the end of my career than go get traded somewhere else and maybe win and maybe not. But that doesn't seem like what Beal has been doing compared to Lillard.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's one of the reasons it's a gamble at this point, because you're like, well, what the hell has been going on the last 3 or 4 years, and is this just who you are at this point? Like, he also hasn't been shooting the three very well the last 3 or 4 years, so it's not a sure thing by any means. Why wouldn't you want all three superstars, Mike? I guess Harden is not a superstar, but
neither is Beal.
Well,
I
yeah,
think
okay.
I think
very
the offense
sad
would
big three.
Yeah. I think the offense would just look very clunky and a lot of standing around, and the defense would obviously suffer with both Harden and Beal in there at the same time. I think it would probably require Maxey, as Spike or somebody mentioned before, and I'm not excited about doing that. Take the main juice out of a team that had such a small, friggin' shot glass of juice to begin with. So I see it from like a, hey, just stack as many superstars as possible, but that's a lot of superstars on the wrong side of 30. And I think it could just send me to an early grave. The thing that I'm worried about with Beal, not worried about, but trying to like fast forward into the future. There's a reality where the Sixers trade for him, Tobias, a future first and a pick swap or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reality where Miami trades for him, and it's Tyler Hero and Kyle Lowry and a pick. And if Miami does it, the reaction's going to be, here it comes, the Brad Beal resurgence, heat culture. They're going to do it. He's going to move in with Udonis Haslem. Like, it's going to be huge. Everybody, Brad Beal in a fucking, showing so much chest in a open shirted button down.
Yeah, linen shirt in
Yeah.
South Beach, sure.
And obviously everyone would just be like, oh, he's going to turn it around. It's going to work out. And no matter where he goes, he's still Brad Beal. So, like, I guess, where is your ideal? What do you think is going to happen, and where do you think is the best place for him to actually become, a good player again, an effective winning player again?
Yeah, well, I think any team that's competing for a spot in the finals, like top of the conference, is going to be such a massive upgrade that he's going to be like, holy shit, I didn't know that you could play NBA basketball like this and like win 50 plus games. Like the Wizards haven't won 50 games in like 35 years, like 1979, I think. I don't know. So maybe even longer, maybe that's 50 years. But in terms of like what he can achieve, all of that is going to be dependent on who the number one guy is. The sales pitch for Beal is he complements a great player really, really well, doesn't need the ball in his hands to be effective. And I think if you send him to Milwaukee, who's apparently interested, he'd be perfect next to Giannis. If you send him down to Miami and have him playing off Bam and Jimmy and cutting and getting a bunch of mid-range looks, like he could be really, really effective. In Philly, the question is like, how much do you trust Joel Embiid after watching the way things played out at the end of the playoffs here? Like he's going to have a lot to prove before people buy into Embiid and Beal. But I do think just there's going to be a little more juice in Beal just competing every night and being on a team that's actually like in the mix and relevant. And ultimately, whether it succeeds or fails will be contingent on Joel and who he is.
I think the Joel conversation, the Joel question is correct, but is also completely immaterial and doesn't matter in that. Do you believe it? I don't know. Probably not. Like if it's anything like what we've seen, then probably not, but it's not impossible that he does. Right. So, and there's no better option currently than how good. I mean, we're sort of, and we're responsible for this to a certain extent. We're underrating him a little bit in that he just won MVP, was a scoring champion 2 consecutive years, and the other 2 years before winning MVP, he was second for MVP. So, in some regard, even though I don't believe he is the best player in the NBA, in some regard, you could argue that over the last 3 years, he has been the second best player in the NBA. Mm-hmm. There's an argument to be made there. So, it's the same reason why 6 years ago, I'm not saying we'll end the same way, but 6 years ago, it would have been completely fair to say to yourself, James Harden can get there. He can do it. He's still scoring like nobody else is. He's still the best player, yada, yada, yada. He's 29. Yeah, I'll give him another shot. But it's also why at 34, you have to look at him and go, I have enough of I have a choice, because there are players better than him, and I have a choice to not give him the contract. The thing is with Joel, is just like we're in a place where there's no choice for better or for worse. I don't think that's bad, but you can't just actively say, I don't want one of the 5 best players in the NBA who just won MVP because I don't believe he can get over the hump. You have to at least believe in the possibility, I think.
And with Joel, totally. At least, though I was very disappointed, and
you told him to quit.
I told everyone to quit, first of all.
Wow.
So that's
I didn't hear that.
I told ourselves to.
I love you guys so much. I did not have the heart to listen to the depressing post-game 7.
I appreciate that. That means a lot, actually.
Would have been the lowest moment since the Okafor pick. I imagine.
There's been a lot of them. It's hard to know. But you could at least credibly, based on what Spike just said, convince yourself, yeah, he came back way early from a sprained knee, and he was just not fully himself. I still feel disappointed and upset and blame him for a good amount. But you could at least go like, yeah, the guy came back seriously way early. The reports of like, oh, this is going to keep him out a month, and it kept him out like a week and a half. Mm-hmm. So you could go like, okay, why would we judge him? And it's not like Embiid had not been the problem in the playoffs for the Sixers run before, with the exception of like, okay, he got totally punked by, Marc Gasol and occasionally, but like he's delivered in playoff moments before. And so it's not like here's another situation where he doesn't like have it, but it felt bad because it felt like, oh, all the improvements that he had made over those last 3 years where he was one of the best players in the league, those sort of evaporated. And I guess as we get further away from that devastation, I'm more willing, or I'm as a confused animal that has nowhere else to be,
Just showing up at the pond.
forcing
Paved or
myself,
otherwise,
have no
yeah.
choice but to be more willing to like let him a little bit more off the hook than I was, a month ago.
And I did not mean that as like an anti-Embiid take in terms of what's possible for Beal. I just thought your question is in terms of like how you measure success for Beal. If you measure it by how deep he goes in the playoffs, he's a beta, and it's going to depend on the guy who is the number one player on the roster. At the same time, you look at Embiid, and he was so bad and disappointing, and I think also it just broke the seal on like criticizing years when he was kind of uneven, and there were injuries and stuff like that. So everybody was just ready to let him have it. And they ignored how terrible Harden was down the stretch in that series. And like the argument for Embiid is he hasn't had like a credible sidekick in the biggest games of the season for basically his entire career. And Bradley Beal may not be that credible in some people's eyes, but like he wouldn't go the entire fourth quarter just kicking to DeAnthony Melton and having DeAnthony Melton decide the season, not looking at the basket and not looking at Joel Embiid and getting him the ball. So I think there is definitely room to imagine like a different outcome with Embiid, but it's an open question at this point.
I don't know, man.
Is this what the Post Game 7 podcast was?
No, it was
a lot
worse.
of
That was bad.
Sharp, the Sixers don't even have a pick in the draft next week.
Yeah.
So, and you know how much that hurts for me. There was a report that there's
They're
a
trying to
good
buy
chance
one.
that they're getting a second rounder, which would obviously immediately bring me back.
Can I ask you about the draft? Are you a Thompson Twins guy?
Yeah.
Okay. Because it's very strange to me. I keep seeing all these like draft nerds geek out at how unbelievable the Thompson twins are and how incredible their athleticism is, and Amen Thompson and his vision and all this. And then they're mocked at like the 7th or 8th pick in a lot of places. So I don't understand if they're that amazing, why they're sliding.
I think people still don't really respect the like he did it in college. If they can defer to like, oh, they didn't play college basketball, or they played for this other team that we don't really understand, then they can go like, maybe it wasn't real. And the shot is definitely a concern. But the athleticism is crazy. I'm not a Brandon Miller guy. I don't think he's that dynamic. I think he's going to be fine, but I don't see him as like the superstar that a lot of other people see him as. And so I would have the Thompson twins over Brandon Miller for sure, because I think I think the athleticism is really crazy, and the ball in their hands. There's some like more athletic SGA action going on with the Thompson twins, and I love SGA, and I have for so long. Halliburton-esque type, like with athleticism type situations. Just finishing around the rim, getting places with the ball in their hands. I'm very excited. I'm gonna try to go to Summer League this year. Summer League is gonna be a Thompson Twins situation for me personally.
I love the glow in your voice when you talk.
This is all I want, man. All I want to do.
19-year-olds.
Hope. Give me some hope.
By the way, but worried about the shot, but love the athleticism was the second choice for the title of the Ricky. That was it was going to be the.
But it's not a zero shot situation. It's just they're still getting there, but they're extremely dynamic. Also, I think Brandon Miller's shot is weird. He shoots it very low, and for a guy that's that tall, and is like, hey, look at, you can get a shot off anybody, but it's like Michael Porter Jr., who I don't like, at least gets crazy lift on his shot and shoots it so high, and Miller just doesn't do that.
Also doesn't finish particularly well. I don't really get it with Brandon Miller, but I also am not immersed in this stuff the way I used to be when you and I could like go back and forth for hours. So I'm deferring to the experts who are like, yeah, Brandon Miller, definitely a top 3 pick. But watching him in the NCAA tournament, I was like, I'm not really sure I see it. But we'll see. I await Spike's YouTube big board before I really formulate my takes.
We have very little time to do it. I don't even know if it's gonna happen, to be honest with you. We have
There should be
draft
more
is this
time.
week.
The NFL does it right, where there's
fucking
like
figure it
many
out,
months.
man.
There's many months
Mike
between.
told me that he was going to send me a list because I shouldn't.
I'll send you a couple guys. Okay, I'll send you a couple second round options. We can be more targeted about it. I'm not going to send you like here's Victor Wembanyama.
You said you were going to send me a list. Because
I'm going to.
It was on the pod. But the friggin' draft is Thursday. So, you know what?
You're watching 10 YouTube clips.
That is not how it works. It takes longer. It takes me a whole day usually. All right. Sharp, get out of here. We've had enough of you, I think.
Okay.
Where do you think
guys
he's going to
are
end
great.
up? Where do you think Brad Beal ends up?
Yeah.
Your gut.
Gut, he ends up in Miami, which is a little bit boring. My dream would be the Bucks trade Drew Holiday for Bradley Beal. The Wizards redirect Drew Holiday to the Blazers, and the Blazers give us the 3rd pick. And the Hornets are stupid enough to take Brandon Miller at 2, and Scoot ends
I've
up
heard
in DC.
so much of this. Brad Beal ends up getting you the 3rd pick thing, and it is it's not going to happen.
It's not crazy. It makes sense for every team involved, including the Blazers, who are just begging to do something really stupid over the next week or so.
No, that's
so
for
we
sure.
take advantage of the idiots in the room and, end up with whoever at 3. I've trashed Brandon Miller for the last 5 minutes, so maybe he's a future Wizard. We'll see.
You guys haven't drafted enough power forwards over the last 6 years.
I don't know. That's right, Denny. A bit of a logjam with Denny
Really?
and Kuzma.
Well, I think
but-
Jan Vesely can really figure it out. I think he's 1 year away from getting there.
Yeah, there's my pond of sadness.
I kind of think Beal ends up with the Knicks. I think it's an RJ Barrett situation.
Yeah, I've thought that as I think that's as I mean they need to get better. They have things to trade. They can probably outbid anybody. They have contracts that will make it work. I don't think it will. He would be helpful, but it will put a bit of a ceiling on the Knicks, I think.
Well, they've had a ceiling for so long. I think Brunson, Beal, Grimes, Randall, Mitch, with quickly off the bench is a really good team.
Yeah.
And could win like a round or 2 in the playoffs.
Well, what's nice is that over the last 3 years, the Wizards were treating Bradley Beal like he was LeBron James and catering to his every whim, and then winning like 36 games a season, just enough to take us out of contention for any like decent draft picks. And I felt like I was losing my mind. So moving forward, it's a whole new day, and I truly don't give a shit who trades for Bradley Beal as long as we're like choosing a direction here and committing to rebuilding.
Interesting, because 10 years ago when you and I lived
know.
together,
The great irony.
I was dying. I was so happy that there was a direction being chosen, and it really grinded your gears.
Yeah.
That I was as happy as I was, and now 10 years into there's some fun. There's some Wizards fun in there, here and there. The funeral game, etc.
a lot of runs to the second round, just like the Sixers team,
which I'm
you
familiar
wound
with.
up
But at least there's a direction. I'm happy that you're seeing the light on a direction needing to be chosen.
That's right. Maybe we can call Sam, get his advice as we receive all these Beal bids. But it's great to see you guys.
Good to see you, pal.
Keep doing your thing, Mike. I hopefully will see you in Vegas.
All right, pal.
All right.
Andrew Sharp of Sharp Tech and Sharp China and Greatest of All Talk. You can subscribe at just go to Sharp's. You're not going to know how to spell Stratechery, but you subscribe to Stratechery Plus. You can go to Andrew Sharp on Twitter. Sharp used to be a lawyer, was never a preferred lawyer on this podcast. Our only preferred lawyer is Kornblau Kornblau, the official law firm of the process. I would have not been comfortable having Andrew Sharp represent me in any legal situation. Whereas Kornblau Kornblau, featuring Adam Kornblau, our guy, I have the utmost and number one confidence in representing you in any sort of personal injury case. That is why they are the premier boutique personal injury law firm in the area, in the Delaware Valley. You see advertising, hear advertising all the time for personal injury law firms. Perhaps you're driving along 95 and you see some guy up there that looks like he's actually in Philly until you see him in New York and see him in Boston looking like he's actually there. Most of these personal injury law firms, they are just referral services. You're not even getting the person that you think you're getting. With Kornblau and Kornblau, you're always getting a Kornblau. There's medical malpractice, whether it is slip and fall, injured at work, car accident, whatever it is, that is where you want to go. 215-576-7200, 215-576-7200. Ask for Adam. You'll get them. Or email Kornblau, Kornblau, at kornblauandkornblau.com. Kornblau and Kornblau, the official law firm of The Process. Let's catch up on a couple of emails and voicemails before we get out of here. Write to RickySanchez@gmail.com.
You want me to do the assistant coach thing too?
Oh, yeah. What would you rather do?
Probably assistant coach. We should say
Okay.
that.
Sixers hired 2 assistant. I have one voicemail and one email I'd like to get to, but Sixers hired 2 assistant coaches.
Mhm.
Rico Hines,
Mhm.
who had been part of Nurse's staff on the Raptors, whose focus has been player development, and then Bobby Jackson, who played in the league for quite a while and was head coach of the Stockton Kings, also on Nurse's staff. I don't know anything about either of them except for that Bobby Jackson used to be an NBA player. What do you know?
Yeah, Bobby was obviously part of those iconic Sacramento teams. Won Sixth Man of the Year in I think 2003. He was an assistant coach for a few places before getting hired to coach those Stockton Kings, which similar sort of path, at least in that sense, to Nick Nurse. So I think there's some kinship there of coaching the G League. Nick Nurse was then hired to be Dwayne Casey's assistant in Toronto. I did see Bobby Jackson playing blackjack at Summer League once when a drunk Dave Reuter would yell at him from a different table asking if he should hit or stay. So think about that.
How was he as a blackjack
factor that
player?
in.
Do you remember?
I don't think I had at that time had the gall to sit and watch. It's sort of like walk by and was like, there he is. And then Dave was pretty drunk and was yelling, "Bobby, what do I do here?" Which was pretty good. Rico Hines, player development for Nick Nurse in Toronto. He gets some credit for Siakam's development into an all-star, which makes me think of B-Ball Paul. Siakam is a sort of funky type player, a little bit of an offbeat type of player that B-Ball Paul plays in a similar rhythm to. Obviously, very different players, but I just think of B-Ball Paul all the time. And so when I hear development, I think about B-Ball Paul. Rico Hines has these intense games at UCLA in the offseason with like big stars that come, and he runs the gym and he seems to take it as his own like little fiefdom. But he's very well liked and he gets guys to show up to those games. And that could ostensibly help with free agency stuff, reputation around the league, that kind of thing. There's an interesting section in his Wikipedia that I'll just read. And then we can just have it, we can say it, and we can move on. Rico Hines married actress Tashina Arnold in 2012. Tashina Arnold is best known for her role as Pamela James on the sitcom Martin.
Okay.
In the 90s.
Emma Martin.
She's now on the Neighborhood, which Alyssa is a writer on, and I've been to Tashina's house for a Halloween party. Back to the Wikipedia article. In January 2016, Tashina told People magazine she would be divorcing Hines, allegedly due to a scandal involving infidelity. The media reported that Hines had been unfaithful to Arnold, having made a sex tape with another woman during their marriage, which was later released to the public without his consent, which is a crazy thing to have in a Wikipedia article about an assistant coach. And I felt compelled to read it on the podcast. So hopefully he's past that and can do a good job turning B-Ball Paul into an all-star.
Going to be hard to not try and find the sex.
That's like, man, it's a long off season.
Yeah, I can't wait till the YouTube pops up. You know, Harden resigns. We do play-by-play of sex tape.
Make Mike react to the sex tape. It's strange that the story of who released the sex tape. Then, if he wanted to have a sex tape, it was released without his consent. It's just a strange. It's just don't be doing sex tapes. What year is it? What are we doing?
Unless you want to make a sex tape. I've never made a sex tape, but if you want to make a sex tape, go ahead.
Doesn't sound. It's never. it's never as good as you think it looks. There's no way. There's just no way.
What I would say
when I watch like someone like tape video me playing basketball,
yes,
I'll be like, this can't be what it looks like. It can't be, and I can only imagine how bad sex looks when it's on tape, and you're not getting the angles right. There's no way. There's no way it looks good. Don't do it.
Do it the right way.
If you want to get a director, then I could be convinced. Yeah.
If you're gonna make the sex tape, I do think the idea of going old school, doing it with actual, videotape. That way, somebody just can't email it to somebody and then watch it and then burn it. I think is.
So, all right, let's get to the emails.
Okay. Writes to RickySanchez@gmail.com. Writes to RickySanchez@gmail.com. This came from Ben, who is a regular listener. And honestly, his tone of his emails and his comments, Ben needs to I'm not saying that Ben doesn't have a point sometimes. Ben needs to touch grass just a little bit, relax just a little. This comes from Ben. It was always wrong of process critics to make fun of those who supported Hinkie for assuming we thought what he did was so intelligent. What Hinkie did was bold, more so something supremely light years ahead of other franchises. That's why Hinkie would trade Joel this offseason. It's the bold thing to do that so many people are deriding as something that you, quote, simply cannot do, just like for some reason you, quote, simply cannot sign Harden. Bullshit. You can do both. Trade Embiid for Anthony Simons and number 3. Let Harden walk. Figure out Maxey by the deadline or in the offseason as to his fit with Simons and Scoot or Miller. The reset button is there for a reason. Only cowards are afraid to press it. Mike,
no, I mean, I two things. One, I don't think Hinkie was that bold. I think that
ownership allowed him to be more bold than other. I think.
Yeah, it was very easy and smart to just go like, this team fucking sucks. We're gonna just have the longest view on everything, and you can win trades by doing that. And so that was nice. And then he took a fucking shit ton of shots at various guys in the draft, some of whom worked out and are still playing basketball many years later today. I don't think that Hinkie would trade Embiid. I don't at all. I think that you have a superstar who just won MVP. You owe it, and who has had a number of some fluky, some maybe avoidable injury moments in the playoffs that have affected his play. And so it's just like you got it. They're so rare that you find a two-way superstar that to give up on him early and expect that a rebuild is better. When it was 2013 and the Sixers had Andre Iguodala and a young Drew Holiday and Evan Turner and Spencer Hawes and Thad Young, you could go like, yeah, these guys aren't going anywhere. We can rebuild. But if he had Joel at that time, I think that wouldn't have been the case. Like, you go for it when you have that type of guy. And I see the idea of like selling high on value or whatever it is, but the rebuilds are not guaranteed to do anything except for like inflict a lot of pain. And so you only do it unless like the present doesn't have any other options. Like the Wizards should rebuild because they have no ceiling. The Sixers still there's still heights for the Sixers to reach if a guy that won MVP last year and was second the 2 years before we can reorient stuff around him and he can get better and the coaching can be better and the personnel, all that stuff. Like it's just too possible. And it's so hard to get a superstar like that who is healthy right now and has been healthy for the bulk of his career at this point, aside from like, unfortunately in the playoffs, which is just devastating for him. But you just don't go like, move on, rebuild it, do it again. It's you only do that when there's no upside on the roster, and there really is.
Agree with just about everything. The only two things I would add that are not in contrast to anything you said, just as an addition. One, they're not going to rebuild as they're trying to get in this new arena. It's not going to happen. If you're hoping that it's going to happen, there's no chance it's going to happen. Zero, none, not going to happen. The second thing is, could you sell lower on Embiid than the number 3 pick and Anthony Simons?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they'd have to send in like 4 more first rounders.
Yeah, like,
over years.
and I like Anthony Simons, but
Yeah, no, it's not even close. It's not.
there's no chance that a backcourt of Tyrese Maxey and Anthony Simons is. There's no chance.
There's
and then
no
along with a draft pick where you're just going to draft another guard. What do you? Whatever. And then the final voicemail, CJ, you're going to have to pop up for this one. In that you are referenced in it. 833 Lickface. We have so many voicemails. I'm sorry. 833 Lickface, but this one was very important.
So hypothetically, if you guys were in a bubble, having to do the podcast in a bubble, you decided to bring someone to have sex with, let's assume you guys are single, do you think CJ would take the fall for bringing that person into the bubble and get kicked out to cover for you guys having sex in the podcast bubble? Really important that I know the answer to this. Thanks, CJ.
So obviously this in reference to our assertion that Daniel House took the sex bullet for Harden in the bubble. Question, I think we'll answer first, and then we would go to CJ. In this situation, we are all single. Mike, do you believe CJ would take the sex bubble or the sex bullet for us in the bubble, in the podcast?
I think absolutely he would. 100%. I am so confident in CJ lying down for us and saying that was my sex.
I do not believe CJ would take the sex bullet for us.
Wow.
I believe CJ does have some concerns about his public image. And so I think he would not take the sex bullet. CJ, would you take the sex bullet for one of us in the podcast bubble?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I knew it.
All right. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I knew it.
Yeah.
All right. So it's obviously a very plausible scenario where there's a podcast bubble that we were trying to bring someone into to have sex with. So we just have to make that happen.
I do like the non-single version of it in which I'm married. I sneak my wife in to have sex with her in the bubble.
It was CJ.
I get caught, but CJ takes the bullet, so I get to stay in the podcast bubble, the bullet of having sex with my wife.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to have to figure out what we're doing this week. Because if there's going to be a big board, our next podcast.
We'll do some draft talk next week.
All right.
Oh, Montrezl Harrell has to decide on his player option the day before the draft, which presumably will be the day we do a podcast.
Okay. We'll have to redo our schedule. That's okay.
Are we not doing one before the draft?
Well, no, it was.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, but I'm not fucking. I am not doing a post draft podcast with the Sixers.
All right.
So
okay,
we'll figure it out. We'll talk about it off air. All right. We'll talk to you next time, whenever that next time.
Don't pick up your player option. You don't want to do it. You have so much left to give to another team.
All right. We'll talk to you next time. Are you done with TTP?
Yeah, like face.